Gromcast! 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 Okay, folks, I'm back. I am sorry it has taken so long to get another episode out. Life has just got in the way. So much stuff going on. Work's been busy. Life at home has been super busy. The laptop decided to break. So with a lot of help from my good friend, Mr. Graham Bean, we've managed to get all that back up and running, get all that sorted out. So now I'm kind of on a technological even keel on my fairly basic setup, it's got to be said. We are back at it for episode 7 of Gromcast. On this episode, we have got Luke and Francis Williamson. Obviously, you guys mostly imagine have listened to episodes before. You're going to know Luke from previous episodes. For those who don't, Luke's super local to Rogate, and Luke races elite level World Cup downhill. And he's also, his dad Francis is also kind of a large part of the support that's helped Luke get to where he is. He's normally helping him out on the spanners. Normally helps out mechanic out of the races as part of his 555 gravity team setup. And he's got a real deep sport background in racing motorbikes, so he's very familiar with other kind of sports, and has some really useful insights into some of the changes that we've got going forward this year, going into the World Cup. So without further ado, I think we'll get straight into it. Yeah, let's go. Cool, so here we are then, back with it for Gromcast, and we have with us Luke Williamson and the lesser known part of the Williamson duo, Francis Williamson.
Hello.
Afternoon, fellas.
Hello.
Cool. So, should you have a bit of a season recap for Luke after a bit of, I'll say it's probably a bit of an up and down year last year?
Yeah, I think, when did we last catch up? Was it after Fort William?
After Fort William.
It was a bit of a struggle after that. Had a couple of injuries, one straight after the other.
Yeah.
And then struggled to get going again a bit until the last national of the season, which went quite well.
That did go very well, didn't it?
That
bagged the overall, didn't it?
Yeah. So that threw a bit of a positive spin on things.
Nice.
But yeah, it was pretty up and down.
So, this season, when we get around to it, it's going to be a bit different this year, isn't it?
I guess
by the looks of things. As a rider who's not right at the top end of the tree yet, I'll say yet.
Yeah.
What's your initial thoughts on how what these initial changes are going to kind of impact you?
I think there's all sorts of, you could put kind of different spins on it depending on what your opinions are.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's going to be a lot harder to qualify for a main event, the actual final. But at the same time, if I thought the best result I was ever going to get would be, just inside the top 60 or, just outside top 30, I probably wouldn't be so bothered about carrying on racing. So it's definitely going to make things more challenging, but I think it's still there's still some some good aspects of it for those that are kind of between the top 30 and the top 60. Obviously, they've got the semi-finals. Although it does seem like a bit of an afterthought, looking at the point system, which I'm not particularly impressed by. Not kind of that I'm angry with it. I just think it just looks a bit silly the way it all works. But they've still got the semi-finals. That's going to be broadcast for free and not hidden behind the
paywall.
The paywall. Yeah. So there's that still. It's not as though they're taking away the race from us completely, but they're adding another one on.
Yeah. I think my kind of take on it, because there's a large chunk of points, isn't it, for semi-finals, as well as finals. So it's almost 2 races in a.
Yeah, I listened to another podcast that said something like after 7th place, I think you earn more points in semi-finals than finals, and it just made me think like the point system it seems a bit stupid.
Yeah.
And also the fact that the finals is only, like for the win, for example, they're only getting an extra 50 points. It seems like it's maybe not biased enough towards the final.
It's going to be a bit of a numbers game in some respects.
Yeah, it is a bit odd. I know someone, Ian Warby, had put together a spreadsheet. He'd properly nerded out on it to try and figure out who would have won the overall last year, and he like based it off of last year's results and somehow figured out if there was a semi-final and a final who would win. I think it still would have been Amory that would have won it by a big chunk, but he'd kind of done a lot of work, number crunching, to look into it.
An awful lot. Francis, how do you, obviously as kind of a supporting parent, because you've played a pretty hefty role in getting Luke to where he is, how, for other riders kind of coming into the sport, my kind of view is it feels like it's getting harder for up and comers to really get into that top end. How do you kind of feel it kind of affects younger riders or newer riders?
If I look at what I think I see coming, I think inevitably it will. I think seeing the bigger picture, of course, Discovery have now got the World Cup, but Red Bull are pretty active out there still.
Yeah.
So I think the World Cup is going to change. And if I'm really honest, I see them going, I won't say the Formula One route, it's easy to say that, but I see it being more commercialised, and I see them having less interest in the participants, so it becomes less of a participant sport, if you want to put it that way, and more of a commercialised sport.
Yep.
I mean, if you look at what they're after, they're going to want enough riders for good content. That's it. Yep. Are they worried about all those numbers that have traditionally turned up? And you've got to remember, in the last couple of years, we've seen huge entries. I mean, over 150 elite riders turning up for the elite class. And I suppose, in some respects, the sport has been quite unusual like that because it's been fairly accessible. Now, those 150 riders are pretty good. They're all pretty good.
The depth of field is huge these days.
It's massive. But obviously, if I'm slightly cynical, the organisers won't need all of those. They need 60 on the, I call it on the grid, but I mean 60 starters effectively. Yeah. That's what they need. Now, of course, it's slightly more complicated than that because they do need 60 starters. And if you look at the attrition rate through the season, there were certain teams I think had no one starting some of the races. Yeah. Because injuries is still fairly high.
Yeah, because there has been some changes on swapping riders mid-team last year. I think it was the union ended up bringing someone in last year because someone was injured and couldn't race.
And I'm not quite sure where that's going to go, but I think effectively, you need more than 60 to make sure you've got 60.
I think there was a rule brought in to do with
substitution, I imagine,
with teams having to have riders.
My understanding was if they are entered as a team, they have to have a rider racing, and I think there's implications for them if they don't.
Yeah, and that's not. To be fair, I've seen that in other sports as well.
Exactly. Sort of as an overall and seeing where they're trying to push the sport. I don't think that's a bad thing. It's kind of ensuring a field, but
I think there's some expectation that the team will turn up, and obviously my background racing other stuff. We saw some of that as well. The teams would be contracted to be there, and effectively part of their contract was providing a rider. And if their two riders were injured, for example, then at some points in time they might look for a third. So I think it'll be an interesting numbers game from that point of view. I'm imagining that we'll start to see less than that huge number of entries that we've seen up until now. Just coming back to the more global scene though, where that quite puts everything, whether that ultimately becomes then an opening for IXS and Red Bull and other things to bring some other series, if I can put it that way, or races into a bigger global picture. Because obviously one of the things, certainly sitting in the UK, and if you're interested in watching on television, downhill. Really, it was Red Bull and that was it. Red Bull,
and very much
World Cup, and that was it.
You would only. I think that was very much only available to the mountain bikers. The mountain bikers know that if you want to watch your downhill, Red Bull's where you go. If you're someone who's maybe been around a bit and aware of it, and you think, oh, I might actually quite like to watch that, you might not necessarily know where it is.
Yeah,
it was a little bit tucked away.
Yeah.
And I think obviously what they're trying to do now with the Discovery thing is make it very much accessible to the masses, mainly for the long-term kind of commercial.
Think, that potentially could be a fantastic thing because the Red Bull offering was great because actually you could sit there for an hour or whatever it took, and you get some pretty good viewing in a fairly condensed format. It's pretty well produced. So it was good viewing in that point, but quite a narrow market end, if you like. And how many people it actually got to an interesting point, and that's a slight imbalance, if you like, in my view, because the whole mountain bike market or participants is huge.
It's massive.
Yet from a television point of view, we're only seeing a tiny weeny bit. And so whether that could ultimately open things up, we'll see some new stuff, some interesting stuff, that might be a great thing, because it actually might open more opportunity up to a lot of people in a lot of ways, and I think that would be a good thing.
I think they've just got to make sure that they can keep enough people or get enough people to, I guess, behind that paywall, or that they can that are willing to pay to watch it.
I know, because initially if you take the pink bike comment section, it's a kind of classic kind of
I was looking
the amount of people. The minute it's paywall, that's it. Well, I'm not going to bother with that anymore. And it's like, well, quite a lot of people will, if you're into something, will pay for their their 30 subscriptions.
I'm not sure. Did they say how much it'll cost yet? No,
I haven't actually looked enough into it.
And I mean that's going to be price sensitive, I would suggest. So if you look at other sports, if I can call it that way, I'm thinking MotoGP in particular, where you have to pay to watch anything. But I think people are paying to watch it. If what you're seeing is good enough and it's tantalising enough to
and it's exciting enough,
make you part with your money, then
I think that comes down again to where they've sort of narrowed the finals field to 30. Initially, I was very much kind of, that's a bit, I'm not so sure about that. But if it's really truncating it to like the absolute cream of the crop, if you like, it's going to make very exciting racing. So as a product that's a lot easier to produce, broadcast, film, it's a bit more what you want to put out there as like a finished product.
A few different action sports, motorsport in particular, that are kind of behind paywall, isn't there?
It's the same with Supercross, isn't it? Is Supercross behind?
I think so.
I mean, some of it sneaks through on YouTube.
Yes. I may have stumbled across some free. Technically, probably not.
But I think potentially there are some positive and negative sides. I think we're all a bit nervous about the new organisation, how it might pan out and how we'll be treated. And there's obviously a fear that they'll only be interested in the big teams. And if you're not one of those big teams, actually, they just don't care.
No.
But equally, they were going to have to still present, enough participants, enough teams, etc., to make it all happen. So, if the balance it comes out right, then I think it could be positive, and it's a move forward, because again the Red Bull World Cup thing was great, but it was quite limited in some respects. And you think, well, where's this really going? It's so niche.
It
limits itself.
My thoughts on it is it was very mountain bike audience centred. Whereas I do feel that Discovery's taken a more of a mainstream audience approach to it. It was a very interesting podcast went out. I think it was Chris at Downtime did one with Cy Patton, because he's done a bit of commentary in the past for Eurosport on the World Cups, and he bumped into his neighbour after he'd literally done one, because he was doing the commentary remotely, and the neighbour was like, "Was that you, Cy Patton?" He saw the name come up, and he was like, "Yeah." And he said, also, that guy had just been watching the MotoGP, and then it went straight to the downhill was on straight after it. And obviously, a lot of the millions watching dropped off, but the numbers were huge that still stayed on to watch the downhill. So the audience is there. And I think this year, a lot of the nervousness is this product going to be enough to? I think we all kind of know where their aims of getting it out there. Is it going to be? We all want to make sure that product that we're getting is actually going to achieve that.
Yeah.
We were saying about going back to like the getting into it, and Red Bull perhaps being sort of more available to do other projects. One of the sort of the topics, if you like, all the points people have raised is at the moment it's very much there's a few national series, and then there's the World Cup. There's not much of sort of a feeding system to go to get to the top of that tree. So like we've got the top of a pyramid. There's nothing really kind of globally to really support riders getting into that.
Yeah, and I think the national series looks like it's picked up again at the moment. I think we're seeing full entries.
Yep.
And the entry quality's gone up, so that appears to be quite healthy. But that step then up to World Cup is quite a big.
It's a big jump
gap.
Yeah.
Certainly in terms of funding for the teams, and I think in the UK, obviously that's one area we struggle because if you need to bring cash in, how are you going to get people that are interested, and what are they going to get back in return?
Yeah.
Now, if you were going to say, I'm going to be, in that last 30 or whatever at the World Cup, that's pretty good. That might be something. But what else are they going to get? So, because effectively, you've got to look at what your domestic presence is, and then what your presence abroad is, and is that interesting to people that might want to sponsor it? What are they going to get out of it? I mean, I think interestingly, in terms of the actual events, then we've done a few of the IXS events in Europe, and they're excellent.
Yeah,
they're fantastic. But of course, they're not. People don't talk about. That's not such a known thing in the UK in general terms. So I think the events are there. It just depends on what delivery comes back and what exposure it gives to the people that are interested.
I think
in terms of whether they get something from it.
Yeah,
I think gravity events are meant to be. Obviously, it's not on the same sort of scale, but they're going to try and live stream some of their racing on YouTube and Facebook this year. I think they're the two nationals that they're running. Obviously, it's not on the same scale as a World Cup, but whether it'll kind of help grow the sport.
It needs someone to make that start, because you're not going to know if people are watching it if it's not there to watch.
Could be a really good step, I guess.
I mean, Cy Patton did it. Even was it Periscope? There's like that broadcasting app. It's like a live broadcasting. I'm sure he did. And people are like, the quality's a bit rubbish. And it's like, there's nothing else really from
watch it. Unless it's really, really bad.
Yeah, unless it's terrible.
I think people will still watch it.
But I think, that's one point actually. The technology that's available to us.
Yeah.
I won't say you could do it with your phone, but we're not far off that now.
Yeah.
In terms of, if you think back, when I first started racing, the BBC used to rock up with about 10 huge trucks and more cable than you could ever imagine to televise an event. And now really they can do it with 3 or 4 cameras maybe, etc. So it's more doable. We've obviously seen the UK Arena Cross series, motocross, as a matter of fact, that's been live streamed. And that I thought was pretty good. I mean, it's not quite on the same level as US Supercross, obviously, but as a starter, it's much better than nothing at all, which is what we had before.
It's just generating that interest and giving something to build on.
Yeah, and I think if then they can make it work, and then they can invest back in a bit, and then the production side of thing gets a bit better. But I'd quite like to see that grassroots sort of coverage. I think that would be really interesting because you just don't see it otherwise.
No.
And one of my pickups from attending the events is people that attend, just say a UK event. Typically, most people, not all, are down the bottom of the hill watching the finish area.
Yeah.
And very often, some of the best bits of track, which are right up the top, very few
don't
people
get seen.
See them.
No, it's all in my experience of big races. Where the biggest one I ever went to was the World Champions, when it was at Full Bill back in 2007, and you sort of, as a race spectator, you kind of time your trip up the gondola to kind of get out there, watch people coming down. So you're basically in the arena for the sharp end of men's finals.
Yeah.
So you do miss kind of the real action on track, but with the screens up, you get in the story, I suppose, of the race.
Those big screens everywhere are I think. And actually, I can remember being at Mont-Saint-Anne 2 years ago, I guess, maybe 3 years ago. I think Bruni won, and actually I was right at the top because I walked up quite late and I wasn't too fussed about being in a big crowd at the bottom. And I remember being stood there and it was almost no one there at all.
Yeah.
And through comes Bruni at high speed.
Yeah.
But it was like, it was me and him in this space. And that was it.
Absolutely
quite
incredible.
But yeah, I think, you know, there's some good things which could move forward, and let's hope they do. I mean, I think, you know, there's enough people riding bikes, there's enough people that are interested. It's just generating that bit more interest into the sports side as well as the just general participation side.
Yeah. So going back to the point you mentioned earlier about how he treated his riders, because there's been a bit of a kind of feeling of ruffling of feathers where, as elite racers, no one really knew about this until the actual public announcement was made. The teams weren't informed first. It was just Discovery's got it now, and then it was a bit of a dead zone. Like, there was no information coming out. Like, teams didn't know, and obviously then the rumours start trickling through. Things about fees going up, which again, that's kind of another one for accessibility in. If they need to be making sure that whatever this product they're going to create this season it needs to be justifying the kind of what is already an expensive sport to get into. If they're now ramping up the team fees and things, people are, certainly for smaller teams like the setup you're on, so we want to be, if we're paying this, we want something solid back from this.
Yeah.
Do you think it's going to kind of go over two ways, I think. It's either going to increase the kind of elitism, if you like, of the top ends, or it's going to be a bit of a wall, I think, from the bottom end.
It's going to be a wall pretty quickly, because the cost of registering a team now is £6,000. I can't remember what it is, something like that now. It's basically doubled.
Yeah.
And, you know, to be really straight with you, we're not seeing anything back from that. We're not seeing double the... double the pit space, or
it's double the money just to be there,
be there.
So, and the rest is on you.
That has been pretty uncomfortable, I think, for everybody. I mean, there was a series of meetings set up with the team managers to try and cascade the data through to bring them on board. But like a lot of changes, people generally don't like change too much.
No.
And I guess just the lack of information made everyone very suspicious, and of course immediately you started talking about the entry fees doubling. Everybody's getting a bit less than happy about that. So I think that's been the negative side, and as ever you think this could have been probably handled a bit better, a bit more positive, or actually, you know, do they just not care as long as they've got those big teams, job done, and that's the slightly more cynical view on it. But I think even the big teams didn't know that much.
It seems to be it was across the board. No one knew.
Yeah, and I think that's why everyone's a bit unsure about it. And I think the other point, even at the top end, so I think some of the top end riders are sort of questioning, you know, looking at what elite sportsmen get paid in other sports. Now we're getting an organiser that's television linked and all the backing. You know, where's this going? We don't seem to have quite got on the pay scale of these other sports. We seem to be experiencing we're getting the workload, the risk, and all the other stuff.
Exactly, especially with the risk in downhill it's not exactly small.
I would say, I mean, it's pretty high, because if you look at the numbers we've seen, I mean, I think the chances of getting an injury during the season are very high. If you're lucky, you get away with not having any serious injuries. But the chances of bumping yourself or doing something, I think, are pretty high. And if you compare that with Formula 1, for example, you can have a serious injury in Formula 1. But the work that those guys have done to develop tubs, etc., that effectively you can have a pretty serious crash and you can walk away
scot-free.
So we're the risk is still quite high, I would say. And inevitably someone will say, well, you take it, you choose to do it. But, you know, let's not take ourselves back to Formula 1 in the 70s, which had that sort of attitude. Let's be a bit more forward-thinking. So, and let's hope that is the way things go, that, you know, the organisers think carefully, look at the more rounded point of view for them, the coverage, and the participants. And I think that will be a good thing.
Good. As a rider yourself, Luke, has it changed your approach to now a World Cup weekend? Because obviously the whole format is going to be very, very different to the previous routine. Also, you've now effectively got 3 race runs in a weekend.
Yeah.
Rather than,
to be honest, not particularly.
No.
The semi-finals and finals will be on the same day, and I think it'll be a case really of going about things similarly, and just trying to almost treat obviously you'll have the goal of getting through to the semi-finals, so you'll work and make sure you got everything dialed in to do that. And then the same with semi-finals to finals, really. Like, just put your best possible kind of race run into the semi-finals, and if that means you make it through to the finals, then great. At least then, like, once you're in that top 30, you know, that's another chance then to score points. So that's kind of already a bonus, just getting into that top 30 finals, and then again just kind of putting your best run together. I think one of the things that could change things is just, I think, something to do with the juniors maybe being like a day ahead with things. So
yes,
that could be quite good actually, like getting to watch the juniors practice.
Because previously the juniors it's just, we know the results, but they're just not shown.
Yeah.
And again, in other terms,
Early
kind
in
of
the morning.
Yeah, so it's a very different. So I think it's good that they're going to get more of a show for them, even if it might be like a highlights sort of package, but we're still seeing the junior racing, which then gives the, in terms of kind of building a product and like story of like individual races. I hate that word, so corny, thanks again, but journey, like through the sport, it's creating more of a, which then builds to more of the overall kind of story through a race season. I think it's a good thing to get them on board. And like you're saying, if you are kind of concentrating on just laying down that good semi-finals run, obviously with the aim of getting through to the finals, but say in some ways the final is now almost just the opportunity to score points, but also it's the guaranteed full run on the live feed. I mean, so from the sponsor's point of view,
for me it's probably a lot different to say the top 5 guys that they might have to change their kind of the way they go about things. I mean, some of those top guys might just be kind of thinking, you know, they'll just put 2 race runs down and go as hard as they can both runs, especially considering the point scoring opportunities in the semi-finals. But for me, I'm not quite in that group of riders, so for me, it's just kind of, you're almost just, each step is, you're just trying to get to the next step throughout the weekend, I guess.
One thing at a time.
Yeah.
I personally, obviously I'm not a racer, I haven't got enough of that that thing in me to like want it hard enough, but I wonder how it's going to change, sort of whether some people are going to deal with it quite well, because you've got riders like Troy Brosnan, the classic like Mr. Consistent, like whether it's going to suit guys like him, or maybe riders like Amory, who does slightly, I mean, watching Amory's great, because it always feels like no matter what generally is going on, Amory tends to take a bit of a shit or bust approach to kinds of his race runs, whether how people's approach is going to change because the format change. Do you think having the semi-finals rather than just the finals, do you think it takes away a bit from the kind of sort of core of downhill, of that one chance to lay down a run, or not? Because there's been a lot of talk about, is it slightly changing like the essence of downhill or not?
Are you able to edit this?
Yeah.
I've got to jump off and go for a week.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, okay.
I've got some kind of good ideas.
Yeah, that's fine, man. So the essence of the sport, is it? Does it kind of take away from that sort of one run to lay it down aspect of downhill, or is it still kind of in keeping?
I guess it does, but it's also just change, isn't it? Coming from, I guess if you compare it to grassroots level, actually grassroots racing, you do 2 runs, don't you?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it'll change things. I'd imagine there's still going to be a goal, and you know, the kind of, you'd have the most pride in winning that finals run, and that would make you, you know, you are the winner on the day then. But at the same time, there's guys that could go away from a weekend having not won the race, but actually be best off in terms of points. Interestingly, like comparing it to, say, motocross, like in the MXGP, you can have a rider that they might not have won either of the races, but they'll actually win the overall for that weekend. Without having won a race, but because they've scored the most points over that weekend, and then they take the win. I'm assuming things are going to stay kind of as they are in terms of, well, the winner. Obviously, the winner is going to be the person that that wins the finals run. But yeah, like I say, you could win the race, but actually, you've had someone that's actually kind of made more advances than you in terms of the overall.
Goes back to that being a bit of a numbers game again, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I hope hopefully that's not an issue, because personally I'm someone that likes to think about kind of doing well in the race and not number crunching. So I think that's kind of brought up a point I didn't think about, like whether that'll bring in like an extra kind of aspect of whether people are going to be number crunching and thinking about what to do over the weekend. Like obviously we've seen some quite exciting like last races of the years, where you know it has been a thing that someone's got to finish in whatever position to win, whether there'll be guys like at the end of the season that will think about that throughout the weekend instead of just the finals run. Like, I don't know, but I quite like thinking about doing well in the race, so hopefully it doesn't kind of change that too much.
Cool. The other point I was going to bring up was obviously with all of these changes, it felt like there was a bit of a push to get like the riders' union arranged. How involved are you guys with that?
Not at all.
Not at all. No,
not at all. No.
Cool. Like,
in fact, if anything, I'd say it's gone quiet. We've heard less about it recently than
I think really, I only see or hear like I probably see similar to what you'd see on social media, or like I guess you'd hear, although I'll hear rumours or not necessarily rumours, like just I'll hear what's been going on from what other riders have been saying maybe. But in terms of my personal involvement, no. Not because, and it's not because I don't want to be a part of it. It's just there's no it doesn't seem like it's fed back to. I don't know whether a lot of the kind of smaller teams it's the case or not. Maybe some it is, maybe some it isn't. But I'll only hear kind of like stories about it or so on. Not like I'm not involved in the meetings that go on.
Okay.
I don't think we're seeing any direct communication out of that organisation at this point.
Okay.
No.
Where you're sitting on it.
No.
Going forward, certainly as this season's going to be probably kind of the teething issue season, do you think it's good that we've now got this to make sure riders collectively have got more of hopefully a say in things? Because certainly at the moment where the changes happened fairly quickly when were announced, it did feel a little bit kind of us and them. It's very much the riders who are effectively the product, and then everyone whose race series it is, the UCI and the people who are broadcasting it are like, right, well, we're doing this and this is how it's going to be. And then it seemed to be a bit like, well, hang on a minute, where do we stand in all of this? We are what you're putting out. Without us, there isn't a thing to put out. How are your thoughts on the kind of, as you're saying about how early on, how well it was handled in terms of announcing it, and how, as a rider, how does it feel like UCI and Discovery, how have they got your interests at heart in all of this? I suppose is the question. How do you feel as a rider that they're going to be kind of delivering what you need and kind of supporting you in some way, shape or form? Or is it...
Yeah, well...
Not quite lambs to the slaughter, but...
I don't really like to... I don't want to form too much of an opinion, because I don't actually know how good or bad it's going to be. But certainly, kind of the way they started off things, I wouldn't say it went down too well with the riders. And whether that's, whether... It's hard to say, whether that's because they're going to go about things in a way that the riders aren't going to like, or whether it's just, they were just late with announcing everything. You don't really know, but certainly, like I say, like the way they kick things off with, or lack of kicking things off with the information, that was like kind of a bad way to start things, because the riders were already questioning. They weren't too pleased about the lack of information, and then I think one of the things that I guess came out fairly early on in terms of the information that came out, I guess obviously there was a lot of talk about the team fees going up, so you had like delay of information, and then one of the pieces of information that did come out, I'm not sure, I don't know, I might be getting mixed up with the timeline of things, but one of the pieces of information that eventually did come out was that the team fees were going to double. So for our team it's gone, has it doubled pretty much? And then like there's some pretty mad fees, I think, for the teams that have like all the different types of teams, like downhill, XC, whether, I don't know whether enduro adds extra cost to it as well, but that again was like another reason for the riders to start questioning things. And then we find out that the prize money's not increasing, and there's just I guess there were like a number of different things that gave the riders reasons to start questioning. And like I said, I don't want to form too much of an opinion, because we might get that investment back. Like the sport might really benefit from what they're going to do. So I don't want to like start slagging it off early, but I can definitely see why things have kind of started the way they have, in terms of like the riders not being too impressed with things, and obviously they've got their union to push their opinions and stuff forwards.
Cool. I think one of the biggest points touched on also kind of rider safety, because it feels like there's been, certainly over the last couple of years, certainly taking like concussion for example, there seems to be, there's a general it feels like there's been a real base shift in opinion towards it, from A, the riders themselves, B, the teams paying the riders to ride. It certainly, back when I started in the 90s, it would be like, oh yeah, someone got a concussion in qualifying, but they're still going to lay down a top 10 in finals. Whereas now, people are like, you're not racing. It's just not. It's just, we just shouldn't be doing this. Obviously, you picked up one in Chomprey last year, was it? Yeah. The other issues, things like the whole saga of Brooke McDonald the other year with his back injury. Do you feel that they certainly with a lot of the bias has been on coverage and extended team things. Do you think there needs to be more done in terms of ensuring rider safety as much as you can with batting a bike downhill as fast as possible? But do you think there's enough in place with making sure that certainly like the first day situation with Brooke and general support from teams and the race organisers is going to improve?
I have no idea.
No.
I have no idea whether it will or won't.
I'd like to comment on that. Actually.
Yeah.
So, I think my observation is we've seen at some events very good standard of medical care, first aid, etc. We've seen at other events a different picture.
Yeah.
And one of the things I found most difficult to get my head around was that here we have a World Cup series.
Yeah.
But it feels like it's put onto the organisers at each event. It's left to them to do what they want.
Yeah.
And I say what they want, that's probably a bit unfair.
What they can is probably...
What they can.
Yeah, afford.
So, whereas, what I'm familiar with, even in racing in the UK,
yep,
doing a top level series, it was organised by one organiser and each circuit had to comply with certain criteria.
Yep.
They had to have X, Y, Z, which might have included a standby helicopter,
yep,
ambulances, and there was like a minimum time, I think, for the doctors to reach an incident. All fairly straightforward stuff. Now, I'm not saying it's easy to get there, but for a world level series, I would question why that just wasn't in place as a standard for each and every event. And it clearly wasn't. It was clearly different from one place to another. So I think that's the one thing which definitely needs standardisation and a sensible approach.
I think this year they are having like the organisers where they're taking like more of an active role, I guess. I think it's going to be like the same team, or at least a good chunk of the same team that are going around to all the different races. So it definitely makes sense for them to have, say, the same team of medical professional at all of the races,
or at least
as well.
The same organisation rather than
like obviously there's logistical issues with taking the same equipment to everywhere, but I think every country they visit is going to have that equipment. So if they had the same medical professionals at every race, and they'd sorted out access to the right equipment to make sure everything was in place should something go wrong. That definitely makes sense. I
always just thought the UCI should be doing more to have more of an approach, like you said, from like the MotoGP and bike racing. That kind of approach would make more sense, because why wouldn't you? Downhill is dangerous.
It feels like they just there should be a minimum spec of you will have this. If you haven't got it, you don't run the event. And it needs to be as black and white as that, I think, unfortunately. I guess because of the way the sport's evolved and grown up, it's got a bit grey, and so different things seem to apply in different places. But if you stand back from it and look at it logically, why would you have this level of safety at one place and a different level somewhere else? It just doesn't make sense.
No,
particularly if you are wanting to say this is a world level series, in which case you'd expect the best of the best of the best.
I think for me, because I've listened recently to podcasts with Brooke, because he's done a couple of podcasts now. We talked about that whole series of events at Mont Saint Anne, and some of the stuff that was talked about, just obviously there was the issues with getting a helicopter there, and then like not being able to land at a certain hospital and all this kind of stuff, and long transfers. But even just the initial getting him off the hill, and what the medics there at one point were trying to do with him was probably not what you would think would be a good thing to do with an injury like he had. That just felt like a real eye-opener of, hang on, we've certainly like going into this season, this stuff needs to be sorted, because you're now asking for more money from the riders. It is meant to be a world level series, and yet we've got people like Brooke with basically other racers around him arguing with the medical staff because they've got a guy who's basically broken his back and they just want to chuck him on the back of a quad bike. As a world level event, that just shouldn't even be happening. There should be an absolute set in stone protocol. This is what happens if this happens.
Yeah, I think that it's quite logical that should be in place. And I think coming back to the money bit, if you like, actually, I think we've seen the team registration fees double, and I think we're all still looking around to say, okay, so
where's it going?
Yeah, I think we just would like an answer. It would be nice to know that there's a benefit of it increasing rather than it's just disappearing somewhere.
Yeah,
which hopefully it's not, but it will be good that clarity was there, I think.
Yeah, I mean, generally I want to give this season kind of going at it with an open mind. It's very easy to kind of draw on the negatives and how it's been handled so far, but I think it feels like the long-term view, I think, is in the right. The idea is right for where they want to try and push it, and I think it's kind of the sport's got to the point where is that what it needs. It just feels like there's a lot of stuff to really nail down and get right for the sake of the sport as a whole and the riders, because I sort of don't want, like with anyone so more of it when I watch Luke race, when you have like at Fort Will, that's pretty live. That's quite a lively run. It's like you don't want to see your mates get down and then have like go and hit the floor hard and then have a complete fiasco if they do have something major happen. Certainly, obviously, as a parent, like watching your son race, it's as a parent, as a team, whichever your whole everything revolves around that individual on that bike, and you're trying to do everything to make sure they can make the most of their runs and arrive in one piece from every conceivable angle. So I think within reason, everything that could be done should be done. Obviously, we're trying to make sure the equipment's ready to go, all sorted. And we'd like, wherever possible, the organisers to make sure their bit's done, which should be good. It's always going to be a dangerous sport, but there are certain things which are sensible to put in place, and let's make sure we've all put those in place. I think is cool. Where I'd like to be. So we'll get off kind of the whole change subject, because I was going to keep this one to about an hour this episode, because there's been a lot of podcasts on this. Well, I thought it'd be nice to get someone who isn't at the top of the tree, because there's been a lot of sort of. It'd be nice to get more of a kind of sort of a
And I think the views are quite difficult on the change too. Because
I know everything's still, some of it's up in the air. But going back to this season, going on tracks you've raced previously, are there any venues you're really looking forward to hitting this year? Other ones you're less keen on?
So actually, last year I missed out on qualifying at Val di Sole by hardly anything. I was 62nd, and I think it would have been like not a lot at all that I missed out on.
No. Was that the race Ethan was on the same? You were both on the same.
No, I think Ethan was. I think he sat out that one. He hurt himself at Worlds. But that one, I feel like, kind of going back there this year. There's just that track. I guess there's just like massive room for improvement on that track. Like so much time to be gained or lost just because it's so rough, so gnarly. It's natural. And I'm keen to go back there this year. I want to go there real strong, with a good setup and just kind of have another crack at it. And I guess that's why I'm looking forward to it. Like I know that last year I was really struggling there, and I feel like if I can go there with the confidence that I've got everything in place to do well there, and I'm not just struggling to hold on to the bike going down the hill, that could be a good one. So that's like probably the standout one at the moment that I'm looking forward to.
Are there any other tracks where you're just like, oh, that's not really my bag, that one?
I don't know really. I'm trying to think. Like Lenzerheid's the first one kicking it off. I think that one will be hard because it's. I think I've only raced there the once actually. And I crashed in the first turn in qualifying. But it's one of those track's like, I don't know what the conditions will be like, but when it's dry, it's quite like the dirt on top gets quite loose and like gravelly or shaly almost.
Yeah, a bit washy.
Yeah. And then in the wet, it's quite slick, but it's also a track where everyone's like real close on times. So that one's, I guess, that one's like another. It's hard, but for like
completely
different reason. I really didn't enjoy snowshoe last year.
No,
but that was my first race back. Like my confidence was awful, and I was really struggling in the mud there.
Yeah.
But like,
I don't think you're the only one at that race. That one was hard for a lot of people. Really struggled with it.
In the dry, I quite liked it, but definitely didn't enjoy it last year.
Yeah, I think weather might be playing a bit of a role in the back end of the season this year, because where the whole season sort of shifted back a bit, we've got Mont St Anne late in the year.
Yeah,
I think that one could be a bit of a pickle.
Hopefully, hopefully that's that'll all go ahead as planned, because otherwise, that could be I don't know. Yeah, that would not be good if everyone turned up there and it was snowing or something.
No, that's not
I'm
not
not quite sure what the weather will be doing by that time of the year. But
another one, just have to wait and see on it.
I think I did look it up, because I think someone did say to me like something about it snowing at that time of year in Mont St Anne. And I think I did look up what it was like over there in, I guess it'll be,
it's early October, isn't it?
Yeah. And I got the impression it wouldn't be that bad, but I don't know. I'm not a local from around there, so I don't know what it usually does.
See how it goes. Cool. So obviously you sewed up the overall at the British Rounds this year. Are you racing the full season again with the Nationals this season? Or do as many of them as you can?
I'm not quite sure what the crack will be with Riola. That's in like, I guess 2.5 weeks time, I think. And I'm still recovering from a surgery, so I'm not really sure. I don't know whether I'll turn up there or whether I'll turn up there and just do some laps and then go home and not really race, or whether I'll be feeling it and race. But it all kind of depends on how strong and fit I'm feeling and how confident I'm feeling, because I've not ridden a mountain bike very much at all in the past few months, so past couple of months. I feel like last year I kind of ticked that box, so
more of a focus on the World Cups.
Focus on the World Cups. If I have to miss that race, then that's all right. I don't really like going and racing somewhere if I don't think I'm not going to do that well, and that's kind of where I stand on it. But I'm entered for the rest of them, I think. So cool. See how it goes.
Cool. So as your overall approach for this year, have you got any particular aims for the World Cup, or bearing in mind we've got such big changes to it, is it going to be kind of a take it as it comes and just try and do as well as you can?
I think so.
As it happens?
I think that's kind of pretty much it. Yeah. Just see how it goes. Try and come into it strong and fit and with plenty of confidence on the bike. And just kind of like fix the issues I've had in previous years, and kind of go there with the belief that hopefully that'll bring some better results with it.
Because you can do it. You've had some really solid results.
Yeah.
You're back on the Common Soul this year.
Yeah.
And that's a bike I think you're pretty comfortable on, because you've ridden the previous incarnation this season before. It's known. It's a good race bike.
Yeah, that's what I got built up at the moment. We're still waiting on the bikes to come. We've got them ordered. So that's what we'll be using for downhill bikes. And they're a proven bike, so no excuses really on that,
it's
on
all
that
kind
side of
of.
things.
It's like
Yeah.
I had a very similar. I've literally just come from work for recording this podcast, folks, and had a very similar conversation with a lot of people. Are very keen to. For the grassroots rider, a lot of people are very keen to blame it on either the trail, that berm's not built very well, or there's something wrong with my bike. And it's like, well, actually, if you just rode it a bit more, or maybe you went and booked some coaching at b1k.com with Mark, you might get a bit better. So when you speak to a lot of racers like yourselves, I do like to hear how they've got a nice methodical approach of working out which zones they want to, which bits they need to build on. Some of it's even things I haven't even thought about. I very much think of it's very much like I need to focus on. With me, it's not dragging my brakes everywhere or just being a bit stronger. But with a lot of racers, it's very much like not so much the riding, but more like the whole kind of racecraft and their routine over a race weekend of being in the right headspace in the tent at the start and all this kind of stuff. I find the whole thing fascinating. So kind of how you deal with it, I love hearing it because
a lot of riders, like if you watch them on their most local trails, like it would probably be, everyone would seem more compact, and then I think you go to a World Cup, and then you do get that opening maybe because you've got the guys that are good at the racecraft as well as the riding.
I think it's where guys like Menard have always been quite strong because he's just he's so calm and kind of just knows what he needs to do. It can just seem to just flick that switch, like I'm racing, I'm doing this, or I need to do this, and just does it. I think it takes quite a lot of racing to even get to that kind of point.
Yeah, I imagine he's definitely pretty dialed in by now.
I think the strategy to get to the package we're going to have for this year, I think we've certainly thought that one out. Is it what's the right tool for the job?
Yeah.
And I think if we look at World Cups, the answer is yes. If we were doing the national series, might be a slightly different equation, but I think for the World Cups, it's the right kit. So hopefully we're actually going in with the right boxes ticked. Yeah,
it's just one of those things to worry about. Like this hasn't got anything potentially that could be an issue. It's just
yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean the rest of the bits on the bikes and like the sponsors and stuff, like they're what you choose to put on a bike really. So even in terms of the stuff we're getting free, it's like no excuses. It's
the best.
It's the stuff that you put on your bike. So
yeah, cool. So to wrap it up then, who do you reckon, men and women's, who do you reckon's going to be in contention for the overall this year?
No idea.
No, I'm not sure.
Wow.
Because there's too many things to change this year.
Yeah, it's probably the same people as usual. I guess you got to think about the consistency side of things, but I think generally it will be that same kind of little group at the top that'll have a good one. But as with most years, there'll probably be someone that will break out and have
someone's going to find their groove. And
I know, thinking about it, like last year you had Andy Kolb with that string of podiums all in a row. Like
that was
things
cool.
change from year to year, but I imagine he would have done like pretty well overall, based off of his ability to like get on the podium just constantly.
Getting on a roll and kind of going with it, isn't it?
Yeah,
right.
But then there's other guys that were finding their form at the end of last season, so it'll be interesting. Same with the women, really. Like there'll be the ones that are more consistent, but then there's there'll be the ones with some real raw speed that when they put it together can have a real good few races. So yeah, I don't like to guess that kind of stuff.
Not a betting man.
I prefer to like just guess in my head and not say.
That's fair enough.
I think the interesting thing will be we talked about it before, the guys that work under stress. We know Bruni, for example, when when the pressure is really on,
world champ
he
specialist,
rises to that occasion.
Greg, G, all riders of that same sort of mindset. But
so I think it'll be an interesting balance, because you've got those guys that rise to the occasion, and then actually, as we've talked about, the points may mean that some of the other ones that are just consistent will be there as well.
That is something.
It's very open.
You could get people start to run away with it a bit, because you think if you were going into a season hoping you were going to win and you had a real bad race, you've then got like almost double the points that you've lost out on, and all of a sudden you could be a massive chunk behind, and once that's in your head, then
it's gonna play around with your mind a bit, isn't it?
So that could change things.
We shall see. Season of change,
and a late start too, relatively.
Which changes things as well.
I
imagine a lot of people, certainly the people who were building up momentum at the end of last season finishes, all the changes get announced, and it's like, oh, bugger. They sort of wanted to be less easy to carry that over. But
it makes quite a long season though, because obviously some people are hard at it already. But then World Cups is a little way off.
It is.
Still, so
it's a very different game this year, but we shall see. Okay, folks, so right at the start of this episode, I said I was back on more of a technological even keel, which for the most part was largely true, except for the first time ever, I had a few technological blunders, mostly my fault, and I managed to delete the last kind of 5-10 minute segment of this episode, which you cannot believe how annoyed I am. It's got 7 episodes in before I've made a foul up like that, but never mind. My last real question to Luke was, who do you see doing well this year, or who would you like to see do well? And he did say his long-time friend, racing patriot, Roger Vieira. Roger Vieira does put the work in. He's had some really good results domestically, and he's starting to get there internationally. So, all the best to Roger. Fully with Luke on that one. That guy definitely puts the graft in. On the subject of the racing, obviously since this podcast was recorded, we've just had the test event out in Lords. And just from going through the social media from all the team outputs, it largely seems positive with how that event has gone. There seems to be a lot of seemed to be a real two-way stream of communication between ESO and the racers on, even just like how the course is marked, all sorts of stuff. So I'm pretty optimistic that we're going to have some good racing coverage this year. We shall see, but looking forward to it. Going back to the technological side of things, I have set up, and it has been set up for a while, there is a GoFundMe for Gromcast. I fully appreciate that things are super tight at the moment for everyone, but I am also really struggling with that at the moment, and I barely have any pounds and pennies to spend on equipment for the podcast to try and make this even better. So if you can, and only if you can, if you could just if you could make a donation, that'd be massively appreciated. I'd really like to get some proper recording equipment for Gromcast this year, so I can keep making things a bit better, and also to help with software for the video side of it. This episode was an audio only one, but going forward, there's going to be a few more online Zoom calls. It'll be good, all similar. So it'd be nice to get some better quality video and audio on that side of it, and I can only sadly do that with a little bit of financial assistance. So anyone out there, if you can donate something, I'll pop all the links in the show description. If you can, that'd be amazing. If you can't, no stress. Times are tough AF right now for everyone. So we've got more episodes coming up soon. It's still going to be a little bit hit and miss. I haven't really got a regular schedule for this. It's kind of working around my busy life at Rogate, which at the moment is very busy. We have got coming up this weekend at Rogate, we have got a Canyon demo weekend, both Saturday and Sunday, this coming weekend. If you want to swing a leg over a Canyon, please come down and do it. Bike and Canyon, we are now partners. I am going to be getting a Canyon Spectral as part of that for my coaching and riding duties at Rogate. I've got a Spectral 29er on the way. We had a chance to demo the bikes recently. I knew it was going to be a good bike. It's very hard to buy a bad one these days, but I really got on with it. Really good fun bike. So really looking forward to a relationship with those guys. That's on this weekend, 29th to 30th of April. I'll pop the links to the tickets in the show description again. So if you want to come and swing a leg over one of those, please do. It's going to be a good hoot. So otherwise, I'll see everyone on the hill soon. Gromcast!
Gromcast.